The academy on the edge of the colony was a place of quiet hums and busy corridors. Students moved from class to class, some chatting, some focused on their assignments, while a few were always in a rush, trying to fit everything in before the day ended. Among them, there was one girl who stood out for all the wrong reasons. She was small, with unkempt hair, a habit of tripping over her own feet, and an awkward smile that never quite reached her eyes. Everyone assumed she was clumsy and weak, a joke they could laugh at without consequence. But what they didn't know was that she was far from ordinary. Her name was left unremarkable in the Academy records. Just another human in a galaxy filled with extraordinary beings. Yet beyond these walls, her reputation had already begun to stir whispers. Across the stars, she was known as a warrior without equal, someone who had turned the tide of battles and faced enemies that even the bravest feared. But here, in this small, ordinary school, she kept her head down, blending into the background, invisible to those who could not see her true strength. Every morning, she would walk through the gates with the other students. Carrying a worn backpack and a thin book under her arm, no one ever noticed the subtle tension in her posture. The way her eyes scanned the surroundings as if calculating every movement, every possibility. Teachers dismissed her as quiet and shy. Students whispered and laughed behind her back, calling her clumsy names. Yet, beneath the surface, she moved with the awareness and precision of someone who had faced death more times than most could imagine. Her first class of the day was mathematics, a subject she enjoyed more than the others. The teacher, a stern human with a love for rules and structure, barely acknowledged her as she slipped into the back row. While the other students fussed over their tablets and notes, she quietly solved problems in her notebook, her handwriting neat and precise. Occasionally, the teacher would glance at her work and nod in approval, but it was a small recognition easily overlooked by the rest of the class. Lunchtime was a different challenge. The cafeteria was crowded, filled with the hum of conversations, the clatter of trays, and the occasional shout of someone calling a friend. She would find a quiet corner, usually at the far end of a table where no one sat. Students nearby would snicker, some daring each other to ask her why she was always alone. She would simply smile faintly and continue eating, her eyes occasionally flicking to a group of students laughing at something she could not hear. She was invisible, and she preferred it that way. Yet invisibility did not mean she was powerless. Her mind was always alert, her senses sharpened by years of experience beyond the school walls. She could hear the faintest shift in the cafeteria, notice the subtle tension in a voice, and detect when someone moved with hidden intentions. Even here, among what seemed like ordinary students, she remained prepared, ready for anything. It was a habit she could not shed, not when her life had depended on it so many times before. In the afternoons, she attended combat training, a subject that most students dreaded. For the rest, it was a playful exercise, a chance to spar and show off. For her, it was routine. She moved through drills with ease, her movements precise, almost too fast for others to follow. Yet she restrained herself, never showing her full capabilities. To the other students, she was still awkward, occasionally fumbling or missing a step. But in reality, she was studying them, observing their strengths and weaknesses, noting who might be a threat or who might need guidance. Every action, every mistake, was an opportunity to learn. Outside training, she often wandered the campus grounds. The garden was her favorite place, a quiet sanctuary where the hum of the colony faded, leaving only the sound of wind and the rustle of leaves. She would sit for hours, reading or meditating, her mind stretching across memories of battlefields, strategies, and victories. In those moments, the academy felt distant, almost trivial. Yet she remained, because she knew that her place in the galaxy was not yet complete. And here, she could gather information, study humans, and prepare for challenges yet unseen. Despite her quiet demeanor, rumors began to stir. A few observant students noticed small details: the way she moved, the precision in her exercises, the sharpness in her eyes when observing the world around her. They whispered among themselves, wondering if she really was as weak as she seemed. Some even tried to provoke her, to see if there was a reaction. But but she never gave them the satisfaction. She remained calm, unflustered, and always slightly ahead of their expectations. They thought they were playing a game with her, but in truth, she was always 3 steps ahead. One afternoon, a minor incident began to shift perceptions. During a history lesson, a group of students argued over the outcomes of a battle from centuries past. Voices rose, tempers flared, and chaos threatened to disrupt the class. She raised a hand, calmly and quietly, and offered a perspective that none of the students had considered. Her explanation was simple, yet filled with insight, drawing connections that even the teacher had not made. The room fell silent. Eyes turned to her, some in surprise, some in disbelief. For a brief moment, she allowed herself a small smile. Perhaps, just perhaps, a few would begin to see beyond the surface. Even so, most still saw her as a joke. It was easier to laugh at the awkward girl than to acknowledge the possibility that she was something extraordinary. And so, she continued her routine. Quiet in the halls, invisible in the classrooms, and disciplined in training. She carried the weight of her hidden legacy silently, knowing that the world outside the academy was full of dangers that could not be ignored. Every day she prepared herself not for recognition, but for survival and the challenges that awaited her beyond these walls. Her evenings were often spent in the library, a place filled with ancient texts, strategy manuals, and histories of galactic conflicts. She would study relentlessly, combining lessons from the past with her own experiences. It was not enough to rely on raw power. She needed knowledge, understanding, and the ability to predict her enemies' moves before they even thought of them. Here in the quiet of the library, she felt a connection to something greater, a purpose that stretched far beyond the confines of the school. One night, as she sat alone in the dim light, she overheard a conversation between 2 alien students from another class. They were speaking in low tones, discussing rumors of a human who had single-handedly turned the tide of a critical battle in a distant sector. They dismissed it at first, thinking it impossible. But when she leaned back slightly, their words caught her attention. They were talking about her past, about the victories she had won, the enemies she had defeated, and the legend that had begun to form. A small smirk crossed her face. Let them whisper. Let them doubt. Soon, they would learn that the legend was real, and the human they laughed at every day was far more than they could imagine. Her reputation in the wider galaxy was a secret she kept with care. No one at the academy needed to know, not yet. She was testing herself, observing the students, and preparing for the day when her abilities might be needed. And she knew that day would come. The galaxy was not a safe place, and the academy, despite its peaceful appearance, was surrounded by forces that would not hesitate to strike. She was ready to stand alone, invisible yet unstoppable, prepared to defend those who could not defend themselves. As the first part of her story at the academy unfolded, she remained the awkward, quiet girl everyone overlooked. But beneath the surface, the human warrior stirred, ready to face challenges that no one could foresee. Every glance, every step, every quiet observation was part of a larger plan, a preparation for the battles that would define her legacy. And though no one yet believed it, the day would come when the joke student would become the legend they never expected. The next morning at the academy began like any other, with students rushing to their classes, conversations buzzing, and the occasional scolding from teachers who tried to keep order. She walked among them, quiet as ever, carrying her worn backpack and a calm expression. But beneath that ordinary exterior, her mind was alive with plans and observations, as sharp and precise as ever. Today, she would face a different kind of challenge, one that could reveal her. Strength without giving away too much. Combat training was scheduled for mid-morning, and the students gathered in the large zero-gravity chamber, a place designed to test agility, coordination, and teamwork. Instructors, both human and alien, lined the walls, ready to supervise. Her classmates joked and whispered, some already planning to tease her. She smiled faintly to herself. Let them think they knew her. Let them underestimate her. It made their reactions later all the more satisfying. The exercise was simple in theory. Pairs of students were to face off in a simulated battle against alien cadets. navigating obstacles, capturing objectives, and eliminating targets. For most, it was chaotic and stressful. For her, it was an opportunity to measure herself, to observe patterns, and to test strategies in a controlled environment. She adjusted the straps on her training suit, her eyes scanning her assigned team and the opposing cadets, analyzing strengths and weaknesses. Her partner, a tall, confident student who prided himself on his combat skills, smirked as she approached. "Don't trip on the way in," he teased. The room laughed quietly, echoing his sentiment. She didn't respond, only nodded, keeping her focus on the exercise ahead. Words were unnecessary. She didn't need to prove herself to him, at least not yet. The simulation began, and chaos erupted. Alien cadets moved swiftly, their forms twisting in ways that made them hard to predict. Her partner lunged at one immediately, eager to show off. She moved differently, fluid, controlled, and deliberate. She didn't rush. She observed noted patterns and waited for the precise moment to act. When the first alien charged toward them, she sidestepped with uncanny speed, using its momentum to redirect it harmlessly into a soft barrier. Her partner stumbled, confused, and for a moment the room's attention shifted. But she didn't stop. Each move was calculated, each action precise, until the objectives were captured and the alien cadets neutralized. Her classmates stared in disbelief. Some whispered, others just gawked. The confident student she was paired with looked at her, mouth slightly open, unable to process what had just happened. She didn't celebrate. She simply moved to the side, letting the instructors mark the exercise complete. Her subtle smile was the only hint that she had fully controlled the entire encounter. The whispers spread quickly. "Did you see that?" One student said to another. She just... The sentence trailed off. They didn't have words for it. No one had expected this quiet, awkward girl to handle the simulation with such mastery, but she remained invisible to their understanding. A ghost of precision that no one could define. After training, students headed to their next classes, and she returned to the library. It had become a sanctuary for her, a place where she could study, plan, and observe without distraction. She opened a tactical manual, reviewing alien combat strategies she had already faced in real battles. Knowledge, she knew, was as important as skill. Understanding the tactics of potential enemies could be the difference between life and death. Her eyes moved across the pages, scanning, absorbing, connecting patterns in ways no ordinary student could. While she studied, she noticed movement near the entrance of the library. A small group of students from her class entered, whispering and glancing her way. One of them, bolder than the rest, approached her table. "Hey, about that exercise. How did you—" The words faltered, as if the student couldn't finish the sentence. She looked up calmly, eyes meeting theirs with a quiet intensity that made them step back slightly. She didn't answer. Sometimes, silence was more powerful than words. As the day continued, her observations extended beyond the classroom. The academy, while seemingly peaceful, had hidden threats. Small signs, a misplaced piece of equipment, a strange glint of light. A shift in cadet movement indicated that someone or something was probing for weaknesses. Most students ignored these details, preoccupied with their studies and social lives. She noticed, she remembered. She planned. If a threat arose, she would be ready. Later, during a strategy session in the Academy's simulation room, she was paired with a group tasked with defending a colony from a sudden alien incursion. The other students were eager, confident in their abilities. She listened, analyzed, and then quietly suggested a different approach. Her plan was simple but unconventional, relying on deception, precise timing, and coordinated movement. At first, her teammates hesitated, unsure of the logic, but as they implemented her suggestions, the simulation shifted in their favor. Alien forces were neutralized, objectives secured, and her team emerged victorious. Once again, she had done it without fanfare, leaving only whispers and curiosity behind. Outside, she walked through the campus gardens, reflecting on the day's events. The sun of the colony reflected off the nearby buildings, casting long shadows across the pathways. Students played and laughed, oblivious to the larger dangers that lurked beyond their world. She remembered past battles, the sounds of combat, the weight of responsibility, and the moments when every decision had life or death consequences. Here, she was safe, almost, but she knew that peace was temporary. The galaxy did not remain quiet for long. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of distant alarms. A minor simulation alert, the instructors explained. Some students panicked, unsure of procedure. She calmly assessed the situation, noting the origin of the alert and the movement patterns of the cadets involved. Without hesitation, she moved to the control station, guiding her classmates with quiet authority. The crisis was managed efficiently, with no casualties and minimal disruption. Again, she had acted behind the scenes, unnoticed by most. But critical to the outcome, in the evening, she returned to her dormitory, where she kept her personal training equipment and a small collection of relics from her battles. These were mementos, reminders of who she was, what she had endured, and the responsibility she carried. She trained alone, honing her skills, practicing maneuvers that no academy lesson could provide. Her muscles moved with precision, her mind calculating trajectories, timing, and responses. Even in isolation, she pushed herself beyond the limits of ordinary students, preparing for challenges that had yet to arrive. Later, she received a message on her personal communicator, a quiet alert from an old contact in the galaxy. It was brief, cryptic, but significant. Something was stirring, a potential threat that could reach the academy if left unchecked. She read the message carefully, memorized the details, and filed it away. No one else needed to know. She was always watching, always ready. Even when the world assumed she was nothing more than a quiet, awkward girl. The night grew deeper, and the academy settled into silence. She sat by her window, looking out at the stars. Each point of light was a distant world, each potentially hiding dangers and challenges. She remembered the battles, the victories, and the losses. Her life had always been defined by the need to survive, to protect, to act when others could not. Here, in this quiet place, she trained herself in patience, observation, and subtlety, preparing for the moments when her true power would need to be revealed. As she closed her eyes, she allowed herself a brief thought: the students who laughed at her, the ones who dismissed her, the teachers who barely noticed her presence, they would all see soon enough. The day would come when the quiet, invisible student would step into the light and show the galaxy that human strength was far beyond what anyone could imagine. Until then, she remained the hidden warrior, moving unseen, planning silently, and preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. Part 2 of her story had unfolded with quiet victories, subtle manipulations, and moments that tested both her patience and her skill. The academy remained unaware of the true legend in their midst, but she knew, and she would wait, watch, and act when the time was right. The invisible human warrior was not a joke. She was the future, a force the galaxy would never forget. The academy's corridors were quieter than usual that morning, the soft hum of lights and the distant chatter of students filling the spaces in between. She moved through them as she always did, a calm presence among the rushing bodies of her peers. Everyone still believed she was clumsy and unremarkable, but today there was an unfamiliar tension in the air. She noticed it immediately. Small details: a misplaced cum panel, a faint shimmer in a window. Cadets glancing around nervously told her something was happening. While her classmates went about their routines, oblivious, she was already calculating, preparing herself for the unknown. During her first class, she kept her attention split between the lesson and the subtle signs of disturbance. A new group of alien students had arrived, their expressions careful and observant. They were quiet, almost too quiet, and their movements were deliberate. Most of her classmates barely noticed them, but she did. She recognized the signs of reconnaissance, the way they moved through the room, how their eyes scanned not just the teacher, but the other students, the exits, and the equipment. She made mental notes, each one a piece of a larger puzzle she was beginning to see. By mid-morning, combat training began. Today's exercise was different, more unpredictable. The instructors announced a challenge. Students would need to protect a simulated colony from a series of surprise attacks. Panic rippled through some of the less experienced students. But she remained composed, studying the layout, the objectives, and the opposition. As the simulation began, the alien cadets moved swiftly, testing the students' coordination and reaction times. Her classmates floundered, unsure how to respond. She, however, moved with quiet efficiency. Each step was calculated, every action precise. She intercepted threats before they reached the objectives, coordinated her peers without drawing attention to herself, and neutralized obstacles with subtlety that left the instructors impressed but unaware of her. Full capabilities? Outside of training? She began noticing other small irregularities around the academy. A group of cadets lingered near the communications hub longer than necessary. Doors she was certain she had locked earlier were slightly ajar. These weren't random mistakes. They were probes, testing weaknesses, searching for vulnerabilities. She followed each sign, carefully observing without revealing her presence. Each day she spent in the academy, she collected information, mapping patterns that could be critical if a real threat. She was learning the battlefield of the school, just as she had learned countless other battlefields across the galaxy. During lunch, she chose her usual quiet corner, but even here, something felt different. A pair of alien students sat nearby, whispering in a language she did not fully understand, but could sense contained subtle warnings. She observed them without reacting, noting gestures and tonal shifts. She did not approach. There was no need. Her awareness alone was enough to gather what she needed. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the nervous energy of the new arrivals, and even the students who continued to mock her were unaware that they were sitting so close to someone who could dismantle their defenses without effort. After lunch, she attended her next strategy session. The instructors had set up a complex simulation requiring multiple teams to defend interconnected colonies from coordinated alien attacks. Most students approached the exercise with bravado, relying on instinct rather than planning. She, on the other hand, observed first, waited for patterns to emerge, and then acted decisively. Her instructions were simple, clear, and effective, guiding her team to anticipate attacks and cover each other. The simulation ended successfully for her group, but she downplayed her role, letting the others take credit for decisions they had followed without understanding. This was a choice, deliberate, to maintain her cover while still demonstrating her capabilities subtly as the day progressed. The signs of a more serious threat became undeniable. Unusual signals were detected near the perimeter of the academy, sensors registering anomalies that had no immediate explanation. She moved to a quiet observation deck, overlooking the campus, her eyes scanning beyond the visible spectrum. Shadows shifted where they should not, and she recognized the telltale signs of infiltration. Her mind raced through scenarios, calculating probabilities and possible outcomes. She could intervene quietly, prevent detection, and neutralize the threat without alarming the other students. And that was exactly what she planned to do. Later in the afternoon, while the rest of the students engaged in routine lessons, she slipped into an unused maintenance corridor. The hall was dimly lit, with panels and conduits lining the walls. Here, she could move unseen. She followed faint energy traces, barely perceptible, leading toward the heart of the academy. Every movement was deliberate, measured, ensuring that no one detected her presence. Her training, honed through countless battles, allowed her to blend into the environment. Invisible to even the most observant eye, she discovered a small group of alien intruders attempting to access a restricted communications array. They were skilled, their movements coordinated and precise, but they had underestimated her. She watched for a moment, calculating the best approach. Then, in a sequence of movements so fast that it was almost a blur, she neutralized the threat. No one was injured, no alarms triggered, and the intruders were left incapacitated, their presence erased as though it had never existed. By the time the instructors and security teams arrived, they found nothing unusual. Unaware that she had already handled the situation with flawless efficiency, returning to her dormitory, she allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. Each day at the academy tested her patience and restraint. She could dominate any exercise, outmatch any student, and yet she remained hidden, her true abilities concealed. It was a discipline she maintained for a reason. If she revealed herself too early, she might draw attention not only from her classmates, but from enemies across the galaxy. She needed to be ready for the moment when her power was truly required, when invisibility was no longer a choice, but a necessity. Evening came, and the academy settled into quiet routines. She studied tactics, reviewing the day's events, and analyzing her observations. The new alien students, the minor infiltrations, and the subtle disturbances in campus systems all pointed to a larger, looming threat. She was patient, gathering data, forming strategies, and preparing for action. Each observation was a piece of a puzzle she was determined to solve, ensuring that when the moment arrived, she would be ready. Her mind also wandered to her classmates. The students who had mocked and overlooked her, she understood why they could not see her for who she was. Their world was simple. Her life was anything but. She didn't hold grudges, but she knew that when the truth revealed itself, their perspective would change entirely. They would see the quiet human warrior, the one they had ignored, and they would understand the magnitude of what they had dismissed. Night deepened, and she sat at the window, looking out at the stars that stretched across the sky. Each one represented a world she had encountered, a battle fought and a challenge faced. Here in the academy, the stakes were lower, but the lessons remained vital. Observation, patience, subtlety, and precision were as important in a quiet school as on a war-torn battlefield. She trained her mind as rigorously as her body, preparing for the day when her hidden power would need to be unleashed. She allowed herself a small smile. The students around her, the instructors, and even the alien cadets believed they knew her. They thought she was a joke, weak and unremarkable. Yet, they had no idea of the depth of her skill, the breadth of her experience, or the readiness that lay just beneath the surface. She was not just a student. She was a warrior, invisible but unstoppable, patient but prepared as she closed her eyes. She reflected on the day's events and the growing sense of unease around the academy. There were forces at play that required vigilance, intelligence, and strength. She had all three, and she would remain hidden until the moment when her intervention was necessary. When that time came, no one would doubt her power, and the legend of the quiet, unassuming girl would finally be revealed. Until then, she remained the invisible protector, moving through the academy with calm efficiency, ready to face any threat that dared to emerge. The morning sun lit up the academy grounds, casting long shadows across the paths and gardens. Students moved about as usual, but she felt a subtle shift in the air. Her instincts, honed by countless battles, told her that today would be different. Something was stirring beyond the ordinary rhythm of classes and exercises. As she walked through the corridors, she observed the usual bustle, but her eyes caught small anomalies, a glance too long. A footstep slightly out of place, a whisper that ended abruptly when she approached. She knew there was more at play than a simple day at school. During her first class, she kept her focus split between the lesson and subtle observations. A group of cadets, both human and alien, were unusually attentive, but their attention wasn't on the teacher. They were scanning, listening, testing. She noticed micro-expressions, slight shifts in body language that told her they were probing, seeking weaknesses. Most students didn't notice, but she did. She made mental notes, cataloging the anomalies. Preparing for the moment when her skills might be needed, combat training arrived. And this session was different from any before. The instructors announced a surprise scenario. Students would face off against elite alien cadets in a high-intensity exercise designed to simulate real battle conditions. Panic rippled through some students, fear evident in their hesitant movements. She remained calm, analyzing the layout and enemy behavior. She moved through the simulation with precision, neutralizing threats almost invisibly, guiding teammates without overtly showing her skill. Her classmates were stunned by the results, but she remained understated, letting them believe luck had played a role. She understood that subtlety often carried more power than overt displays. Outside the training chamber, she noticed small, unexplained events. A door that should have been locked was ajar. Equipment that had been checked earlier showed signs of tampering. These were not random accidents. Someone was testing defenses. Her mind cataloged every detail, forming a picture of what could be a serious threat. She moved through the academy with quiet awareness, monitoring patterns, anticipating movements, and preparing for contingencies. Her peers remained oblivious, still laughing at her and dismissing her as a clumsy joke. During lunch, she chose her usual secluded spot, yet even there, she sensed anomalies. Two alien students, quiet and observant, sat nearby, whispering and scanning the cafeteria. She watched without reacting, noting their movements, gestures, and timing. Every detail was important. She didn't need to confront them yet. Observation was more valuable. She understood the value of patience, of letting information accumulate before taking action. Even her silent posture communicated awareness, a subtle but undeniable presence that few could interpret. The afternoon brought a new challenge, a coordinated simulation across multiple sectors of the academy. Teams were tasked with defending critical points against simulated alien attacks, requiring strategy, coordination, and rapid adaptation. Most students rushed in without careful planning, relying on instinct and luck. She observed, analyzed, and guided her team with precision. Her commands were understated, yet effective, redirecting cadets, anticipating moves, and neutralizing threats before they became serious problems. The simulation ended successfully, with her team credited for their victory, though no one realized the true skill behind the performance. As the day progressed, her attention shifted to a more pressing concern. Unusual energy readings and minor disturbances indicated a real threat. She slipped into a maintenance corridor, moving quietly, her steps measured and deliberate. The hall was dimly lit, lined with conduits and panels. She traced faint energy signatures, signs of unauthorized access and intrusion. The intruders were skilled, moving methodically, but they had underestimated her awareness. With precision and speed, she intercepted them, neutralizing the threat without alarm. By the time security teams arrived, there was no evidence of any intrusion, nothing to indicate the presence of a skilled warrior watching over the academy. Returning to her dormitory, she allowed herself a brief moment to reflect. Each day tested her patience and restraint. She could dominate any exercise, outmatch any student, and yet she remained hidden. It was discipline, and it was necessary. Drawing attention too early could compromise her position, attracting the interest of enemies beyond the academy. She trained her body and mind in private, honing techniques and maneuvers that could be unleashed when the time was critical. Evening came. She reviewed the events of the day. The unusual disturbances, alien probes, and subtle movements of certain cadets suggested a larger, coordinated threat. She considered possible scenarios, potential outcomes, and strategies for intervention. Her mind moved like a chessboard, every action and reaction carefully calculated. Her observations were notes in a larger plan, one that required patience, precision, and a readiness to act without hesitation. Later, she spent time in the Academy's observation tower, overlooking the campus. The stars beyond the horizon were distant and countless, each one a world, a challenge, a memory. Her past battles, victories, and losses played across her mind. The Academy was a calm setting compared to the chaos she had faced. Yet the lessons remained essential. Awareness, preparation, and subtlety could save lives. She trained herself mentally, running simulations, predicting outcomes, and preparing for threats that had yet to emerge. Her mind also wandered to her classmates. She understood why they couldn't see her for who she really was. Their world was limited, simple, and predictable. Her life was complex, shaped by battles and survival across countless worlds. She didn't resent them. She simply recognized that their perception was incomplete. One day, when her abilities were revealed, they would understand the quiet warrior they had overlooked. Until then, she maintained her invisibility, a silent guardian moving through the academy unnoticed, yet ever vigilant. The night deepened, and she returned to her private training area. She moved through exercises with deliberate care, practicing movements, techniques, and strategies. Each motion was precise, honed from countless experiences. Her mind calculated, anticipated, and refined, ensuring that every action would be effective when truly needed. Even alone, she prepared for the moment when invisibility would no longer be necessary. When the Academy and the galaxy would see the full extent of her skill, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. Reflecting on the day's events and the growing awareness that threats were approaching, small intrusions, subtle anomalies, and the careful movements of certain cadets indicated a coordinated effort. She cataloged every detail, prepared contingencies, and analyzed every possible outcome. Each observation strengthened her readiness, ensuring that she would be able to respond effectively. Whether the challenge was a simple breach or a full-scale assault, as she gazed at the stars, she thought of the battles yet to come. The Academy was a microcosm of the galaxy, a place of learning and growth, but also a place of hidden dangers. She understood the importance of preparation, awareness, and restraint. She was invisible to her peers, underestimated and dismissed. But she knew the truth. She was the guardian, the silent protector, and the force that no one should ever underestimate. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the quiet of the night settle around her. She had remained hidden, patient, and vigilant for this long, knowing that the time to reveal her power was not yet. She had protected the Academy, guided her peers, and prepared for threats without drawing attention. Her presence was invisible, but her impact was undeniable. The students would continue to underestimate her. The teachers would continue to overlook her. But she would remain ready, always prepared, and always vigilant. Her day ended with a sense of calm determination. The invisible warrior within the Academy had acted without recognition, neutralized threats without alarm, and prepared for challenges that were still on the horizon. She would remain hidden, moving quietly through the halls, training and observing, waiting for the moment when her abilities would need to be fully revealed. The quiet, unassuming girl was not a joke. She was a force beyond imagination, a human warrior whose skills could change the course of events. Even when no one knew she existed, the Academy awoke to a crisp morning, the air filled with the chatter of students and the distant hum of machinery. She moved through the halls as always, quiet and unassuming, carrying her backpack and the faint smile of someone who knew more than she let on. Today felt different. Her instincts, sharpened by countless battles across the galaxy, told her that the long-hidden threads of unrest were coming together. Something was approaching, something that would demand her full attention and skill. During her first class, she observed carefully, as always. Her peers were oblivious, discussing minor school matters and laughing at trivial things. But she noticed subtle signs, a change in routine, glances exchanged between certain cadets, and the unusual quiet of instructors who normally commanded authority. Her mind cataloged every detail, every anomaly. Preparing for the possibility that a real threat was at hand, combat training followed. Today's scenario was unexpected and intense. The instructors announced a sudden full-scale invasion simulation. Alien cadets moved swiftly, coordinated and precise, challenging the students' abilities. Panic rippled through the less experienced, but she remained calm, her movements calculated and precise. She guided her team quietly, anticipating attacks, positioning her teammates strategically, and neutralizing threats before they escalated. Her actions were subtle yet effective, and the instructors noted the results with impressed curiosity, unaware that the real power behind the maneuvers was completely hidden. Outside the training area, she sensed irregularities that went beyond the simulation. Energy readings indicated unauthorized activity near the Academy's perimeter, and small disturbances suggested a breach. She slipped quietly into maintenance corridors, moving without sound, her eyes scanning for the source of the intrusion. Her instincts guided her along the paths that intruders might use. And soon, she detected the presence of alien operatives, attempting to access the Academy's systems. They were skilled, their movements practiced, but she was faster, more aware, and infinitely more precise. In a blur of motion, she neutralized the intruders. No alarms were triggered, no students harmed. The operatives were incapacitated without realizing the true force that had stopped them. She moved with efficiency, her actions silent, leaving no trace of her presence. By the time security teams arrived, they found nothing out of place. To everyone else, it was as if the academy remained untouched, but she knew the threat was real, and she had acted before it could escalate. Later, in the cafeteria, she sat quietly at her usual corner table, observing her classmates. They continued to gossip, some whispering about her unexpected success in the morning training. Still, they did not understand her. They could not. Her mind was occupied with larger calculations. Considering the broader implications of the intrusions and planning contingencies for future events, every observation, every small anomaly, was a piece of the larger puzzle that she was piecing together. Her strategy session in the afternoon involved a complex simulation across multiple sectors of the academy. Teams had to defend critical points from coordinated alien attacks. While others relied on instinct and chance, she moved with purpose, analyzing patterns, predicting enemy moves, and directing her teammates with subtle efficiency. The simulation ended successfully for her group, credited to teamwork, though no one recognized her as the orchestrator behind the victory. She smiled faintly to herself, understanding that true skill often remained invisible to those who had not earned the perspective to see it. As the day continued, the signals of potential threats became more pronounced. Her observations had revealed a pattern, a convergence of unusual activity, signaling that a more significant event was imminent. She prepared quietly, reviewing plans, memorizing details, and readying her mind and body for immediate action. Her dormitory became a temporary command center, her private space filled with equipment, relics, and manuals that chronicled battles and strategies she had faced across the galaxy. Each tool, each reference, was a reminder of her purpose and her preparedness. Evening arrived, and she moved to the Academy's observation tower. From here, she could see the entire campus, its boundaries, and the distant horizon beyond. Her eyes scanned for anomalies, her senses alert to the slightest irregularity. The stars above reminded her of the vastness of the galaxy, of worlds that were waiting, challenges that were yet to come. The Academy was a microcosm of what she had faced before, a place where vigilance and preparation could prevent disaster. She reflected on her role, the quiet protector who moved unseen, the human warrior underestimated by all but aware of everything. As night fell, the full extent of the imminent threat revealed itself. Alien operatives attempted a coordinated breach of the Academy's main systems designed to disable defenses and sow chaos. Most students panicked, unprepared for such sophistication. She moved swiftly, silently, directing emergency protocols while simultaneously neutralizing the intruders with precise and controlled action. Her movements were almost invisible, yet entirely effective. By the time the alarm systems fully responded, the threat had been contained. Her presence undetected, and the students safe. The instructors arrived, astonished by the efficiency of the response. No one could pinpoint who had acted with such perfection. She remained in the background, a calm observer, quietly monitoring the situation. Her classmates looked around, some fearful, some confused, unaware that the quiet, awkward girl they had mocked was the true force behind the bland containment of the crisis. After ensuring the immediate danger was neutralized, she returned to her dormitory. She reflected on the day, the subtle chaos that had tested her readiness, and the patience required to act without revealing her full abilities. Each action she took was measured, deliberate, and precise. Her skills had saved lives, yet recognition was not her goal. Protection, vigilance, and preparation were her priorities. Fame or acknowledgement was irrelevant when the safety of the Academy and her peers was at stake. She reviewed her notes, considering every possibility for future threats. Each observation, each incident, was cataloged and analyzed. She planned contingencies, strategies, and backup measures. Her mind worked tirelessly, anticipating, predicting, and preparing. The Academy remained unaware of the full depth of her capabilities, her true identity. and the legendary skills that lay dormant beneath her quiet exterior. The night deepened. She allowed herself a moment of calm. Her body honed through countless exercises and battles, relaxed slightly, but her mind remained alert, scanning potential threats and refining strategies. The Academy was safe for now, but the galaxy beyond remained unpredictable and dangerous. Her vigilance could never waver. She had learned that lesson countless times in the past, and she would not forget it now. She thought of her classmates, the ones who had mocked her, underestimated her, and ignored her existence. Soon, they would understand the truth, though not through explanation, but through action. When her full power was revealed, it would be undeniable, impossible to ignore. Until that time, she remained invisible. A quiet guardian, moving unseen, ready to act when necessary, prepared for anything that could threaten the Academy or the human legacy she represented. As she looked out over the stars, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Each day of patience, preparation, and subtle action had brought her closer to the moment when she would no longer need to hide. The Academy, her classmates, and even the instructors had yet to fully realize the presence of a true human warrior among them. But that moment was approaching. When it arrived, they would witness what had been hidden in plain sight. The legend of a human who could face any threat, overcome any obstacle, and protect those who could not protect themselves. She closed her eyes, allowing herself a brief moment of reflection and calm. The invisible warrior had acted with precision, skill, and restraint throughout the day. Threats had been neutralized, her peers had been guided, and the Academy had been kept safe. Her presence remained unnoticed, her power unrecognized, but her impact undeniable. The quiet, underestimated human had proven, once again, that true strength often lay hidden, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. As the stars continued to shine, she prepared for the next day, the next challenge, the next opportunity to protect, observe, and act. She knew the galaxy would continue to test her, but she was ready. The legend was real, even if no one yet knew her name. The human warrior who had been invisible at school was unstoppable on the battlefield. One day everyone would understand exactly what that meant.